I'm the kind of person who is always searching for something new and interesting. Weirdly, one of my favorite kinds of products is novelty soda flavors, and maybe once every few years or so, I enjoy the Taste Around the World experience at the top of the Coca-Cola store in Disney Springs. This allows you to sample 16 different sodas sold outside of the United States, which is a short but fun activity among the other Disney Springs offerings. If you're a park fan, you might remember the original 1998 Ice Station Cool in Epcot, bringing you through an icy tunnel where you view a Neanderthal man frozen mid-sip as he enjoys a refreshing Coca-Cola. On exiting the tunnel, you were let out into a Coca-Cola merchandise store that also had a sampling station for different sodas around the world, tying into the World's Fair theme of the park. Eventually, it was reworked and renamed to Club Cool, and while I'm not a fan of the aesthetic choices of the current version, it is still fun to take people there to try the different sodas and watch their reactions. The origin of this attraction actually began in 1990 with the opening of the World of Coca-Cola in downtown Atlanta, a museum that chronicled the history of the Coca-Cola Company and was notable for letting you try its different sodas from around the world. In my opinion, while the museum-like aspect is interesting, I do think that the novelty soda tastings are the main draw, and in 1997, another version of the museum was built into the Showcase Mall in Las Vegas, although it closed in 2000, converting it to just a Coca-Cola store that you can still visit today. Obviously, Ice Station Cool followed the next year, but while the Atlanta location was successful, the company did announce in 2002 that it would be moving into a much larger building just north of Centennial Olympic Park. This was part of an effort to revitalize this area of the city through tourism, with Coca-Cola donating land that same year for the Georgia Aquarium, which opened in 2005. The original World of Coca-Cola continued operating through 2007, moving to the new property that same year, and only being a short walk across the plaza from the aquarium. Paired together, both attractions can be done pretty easily in a single day, but while I found the Georgia Aquarium's conservation efforts to be praiseworthy, the World of Coca-Cola contrasts as a bizarre museum of heavy-handed propaganda. That's not to say that I disliked it. In fact, the company shamelessly portrays this as an ever-present product, watching over your happiest moments and being there for you like an old friend. It's notably disconcerting in the most entertaining way possible, so let's step inside and take the tour of this incredibly weird attraction. Once through admission and security, tourists to the museum walk into the lobby, where everyone briefly waits for the tour to start. While waiting, your tour guide entertains the crowd, sharing facts about the painted bottles in front of you, and attempting to hype the crowd up for the next stage of the experience. These bottles are actually interesting art pieces, some of which are carved from wood, representing the styles of artists from around the world, and providing a bit of indirect commentary about how ubiquitous Coca-Cola is as a brand and product. Interpret that as you want, but I actually did think that these are rather interesting, and there's a few more scattered around the museum later in the experience. Once it's time for the tour to begin, the crowd is funneled into another room where you descend down a gentle ramp into another waiting area. It might be a bit overwhelming at first, but looking around, the walls, rafters, and display cases are showcasing historic Coca-Cola advertisements and branded products. You won't stay here for very long, so you won't have much time to look around, but while waiting for the next segment of the tour, your guide does point out specific objects and their historic value. After waiting briefly, the doors open and you're let out into a theater where, sitting down, you watch 6 minutes of straight, unapologetic propaganda. Once the film starts, you have to endure Imagine Dragons' I'm on Top of the World, stretched to fit a montage of people caught up in extremely contrived feel-good moments. This dude gets back from Afghanistan, a woman learns to skydive, these frat bros throw a basketball off the balcony of a seaside condo, and in general, it's a lot of fake crying and excitement with hands cut to the mouth. And you know who's always there? It's Coca-Cola, always watching, always there to define every big moment of your life. In fairness, the last time I visited this museum, the film was about living healthy and emphasizing exercise, but still somehow advertising Coke products, so it's not that level of bad, but it's still incredibly weird. Wrapping up with a series of shots of people drinking Coca-Cola in extremely unlikely scenarios, the film essentially thanks your brand loyalty and introduces you to the world of Coca-Cola, with the screen lifting up and inviting you down a hallway and out to a central atrium. What makes the film gross is that it doesn't even need to be this big corporate lie. I already enjoy Coca-Cola knowing that it's an unhealthy vice, or that I can have one without some big contrived life moment. The film would be a lot better if it talked about the history of the company, or even went behind the scenes and discussed the bottling plants, but instead, it's this entrancing propaganda film that would feel offensive if it wasn't so blatantly ridiculous. Moving on, the atrium leads to a few different walkthrough exhibits, but I first started with what was known simply as the Beverage Lab, taking you through some hallways that teach a short history of Coca-Cola and soft drink development, and moving on to the exhibits concerned with proper ingredient mixing. The content here is pretty thin, but there are some interactive information panels, and even a game that detects your motion, but if there's one thing that makes this area worth visiting, it's the soda dispensers at the end. There is an experimental mystery soda that you can try, which just tasted like an overcarbonated cherry drink to me, but the main attraction is the legendary New Coke. In the 80s, as Coca-Cola sales were declining and consumers expressed a preference for Pepsi in blind taste tests, Coca-Cola developed a newer, sweeter version of the drink that premiered in 1985 as New Coke, to much controversy and backlash, with the company quickly bringing back the old formula branded as Coca-Cola Classic. I didn't realize that New Coke had been manufactured up through 2002, but as someone who never tried it, it did hold a sort of legendary curiosity for me. So, as someone who likes novelty sodas, being able to unexpectedly try it here was interesting, even though I thought it just tasted like an overly syrupy Pepsi, and it's pretty clear from that why it was discontinued. Stepping back out into the atrium, the next segment I went through was the Vault, which concerns the closely guarded secret formula developed by the inventor, John S. Pemberton. He originally developed the drink in 1886 as a non-alcoholic alternative to his Coca wine, and sold it at Jacob's Pharmacy, which has since been demolished, but was located only a few blocks from the current World of Coca-Cola building. The Vault discusses the history of early soft drinks, highlights Coca-Cola imitators, and really just markets the formula as a legendary secret that makes the drink more alluring, even going so far as to have you step in front of a vault door where an alarm will sound if you reach out to the hand scanner. Exiting back out into the atrium and turning to your right, the next walkthrough is Milestones of Refreshment, which is mostly a highlight of different Coca-Cola branded products and artifacts throughout the history of the company. It first starts with some small scenes depicting the early history of Coca-Cola, but transitions into a series of cases that showcase the development and evolution of the company brand through advertisement. Moving through, you see an early 20th century delivery car painted in a bright, conspicuous yellow, and other displays cover subjects from the evolution of the bottle, to different eras of vending machines, and to advertisements and merchandise that sport the Coca-Cola brand. Towards the end of this exhibit, a display case highlights Coca-Cola's best-selling soft drinks, but adjacent to this, another, larger display showcases popular soft drink brands that are sold around the world, which is exciting as the tasting portion that comes later is the biggest draw of the museum, I believe. There's actually quite a lot to see in this exhibit, and you could spend a fair amount of time here, but exiting, this finishes up what you can experience in this portion of the museum. Returning back to the atrium and heading upstairs, there are a few exhibits here that are mildly interesting, first starting with an area known as pop culture. There's not a lot here, but there are some displays that showcase different decades of merchandise, as well as Coca-Cola's influence on developing the contemporary image of Santa Claus in his red suit. These displays are interesting, but essentially act as a barrier that creates a line for a Coca-Cola polar bear meet and greet, which did appear to be popular. The adjacent exhibit is labeled as Scent Discovery, which requires you to enter a queue lined with scent boxes, where if you stop to take a sniff, you can attempt to guess at which ingredients you're detecting. Moving around the corner, you enter an interactive game where you stand in front of a podium. With the direction of a game host, they ask you to pump certain numbered buttons which releases a scent, where you'll try to guess what the ingredient is before it appears on screen. It's a very shallow, low engagement kind of game, but it was fun for the few minutes that my group played before returning to the atrium. Finally though, having finished the rest of the exhibits, you reach the main attraction, known appropriately as Taste It. As bottles and a faux assembly line swing overhead, you grab a sample cup and move around to the different stations that feature popular Coca-Cola sodas found throughout the world, with each station being broadly categorized into geographic regions. It's the fun of Epcot's Club Cool, tasting many unfamiliar flavors and enjoying other people's reactions to them, but on a much larger scale with a pretty varied selection. You'll laugh, you'll cry, your fingers will be sticky from nozzles spraying syrup everywhere, and undoubtedly you'll be walking out of here feeling sick and disgusting with all the carbonation and sugar that you just consumed. But you know what? It was worth it, because this is what you were here for. It's the main attraction. It wasn't the classic artifacts of Coca-Cola history, it wasn't the propaganda film where a bottle of Diet Coke watches from the shadows as you achieve major life milestones. It wasn't even the fake vault of the Coca-Cola formula or the unsanitary sniffing boxes of mystery flavors. No, you paid $20 to get in here because you wanted that sip of bitter bubblegum Beverly, that weird Chinese plum soda that somehow tastes like sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce, or the exotic Peruvian Inca Cola, which is actually easily available at most grocery stores if you know where to look for it. The history of the Coca-Cola Company is cool and all, but this is the true reason that anyone should visit. Finishing out on a high note, you exit this area and into the Coca-Cola store, where you can show your brand loyalty and display your sugar addiction through the wide variety of merchandise available. There's actually a remarkably wide variety of products you can find, although considering the size of the store in Disney Springs, I guess it isn't too surprising to see how much can be found here. Overall though, having gone through the entire experience of the World of Coca-Cola, it's actually a pretty good value for only $20 a person. While the film is concerning, and some of the exhibits are really light on material, there are still a lot of interesting elements to observe, and the international soda tasting is still the main attraction, which never really fails to disappoint. I mean, I probably would have paid more than $20 just to taste new Coke, so the surprise of being able to experience it here pretty much fulfills the value of the ticket. While the Georgia Aquarium is more expensive, with tickets starting at $40 online, it's great to pair both of these attractions together to fill up a day near downtown Atlanta. If you're watching this video, I'm assuming you also watched the one where I covered the Georgia Aquarium in this little unofficial Atlanta mini-series I'm doing, but next time, I'm going to finish this off with the mess that is Fun Spot Atlanta and its insane but roughly operated RMC, Air Force One. If you enjoyed this video or what you see on this channel, please do me a favor by leaving a like, and if you want to stay updated with new videos as they release, make sure that you go ahead and hit the subscribe button with bell notification as well.